how do you handle death in the games that you run, and how do you like to see it handled in the games you play in?
Personally, I feel like character death is going to happen because of a lot of things. Poor dice rolls, bad character decisions. The one thing I don't like to see is character deaths because of poor DM planning. That's sort of the one section of a character dying that I'm not okay with. But if it's a not a badly planned setup, encounter, or what have you, and the dice just roll, awful for you and great for the opponents, that's something that it just happens. And if you go to making stupid decisions, then by all means, death. That's my idea. Not everybody thinks the same, and that's okay. There are some players and DMs who feel like they want a more narrative storyline, and
Right.
they don't want characters to die unless it's fitting to the story.
Right. Yeah, there's like some weight to it. And I think that on the other side of that there are DMs that don't want to kill a character that when the player isn't okay with it, essentially. Like if the player hasn't essentially decided that their character is making some sort of like, ultimate sacrifice for the party, that there needs to be some hand wave which occurs to allow them to not be dead. I played in games where everybody gets one, everybody gets one death that doesn't really count or whatever. If that's the way you want to play, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as everybody knows going in the way their DM's planning on handling death. I, as a DM, sometimes have a reticence to kill characters, even those that I know would be fine with it, because there's that nervousness in me that it is something that I've screwed up in the, like I messed up and, I misbalanced this encounter or whatever. But I think that there's something to be said about if as a DM, you're always pulling the punches, that you are kind of taking away, not agency altogether, but by arbitrarily dictating that the threat stops now because it's gone on far enough, that there really wasn't ever a serious threat in the first place. That the party was only ever going to be pushed up until this point, and then you were going to stop. And if the party ever starts to pick up on that, they're not going to stop. They're not going to worry anymore. They won't be concerned about the threat of death because they know you're going to pull back. So I think it's important that it's a real and present danger, to me anyway. I think there are games that's not the story they're trying to tell. And it's not about that kind of stress within the session necessarily.
If you, as a DM, want to run narrative, it has to make sense in the story and everybody agree death, you're going to have some players that if they end up in that game are going to see, hey, it doesn't really matter what I do. There's not any consequences. And they're going to do one of two things. They're going to go all out, or they're going to care much less about your game.
Which is even worse, honestly.
Yeah.
If they're gonna run around and I'm a hero and I know I won't die, so I can, mold this world to my will. They're still playing and they're still probably invested, and that can still be a really fun and entertaining story to tell, as long as they're not horning in on any other player's ability to do these things, so on down the line. But if a player's like, okay, what I do doesn't matter now because we're always gonna survive, and they are checking out as a result of that, that's not good. You don't want a player to disengage because they don't feel like it matters, I guess.
Once again, we go back to everybody on the same page, and that's going to be a recurring thing.
Absolutely.
But as far as players and DMs go, that is one thing that's an upfront thing. Before you join, you need to know session 0, hey, look, how does death work? How do we want it to work? Because if this is a narrative thing where everybody's going to have to be in agreement before a character dies, well, then everybody has to be okay with that, because not everybody likes doing that. And if it's going to be the dice are going to determine your fate kind of game, some players are not okay with that. So everybody needs to know what to expect when it comes to death, because there's no wrong way to do it if everybody's doing it the same way at your table, if that's an expected thing.